Good morning, Africa. Good morning to our viewers from around the globe. It's the conversation on TOS TV Network. And you can tell that I'm excited. Yes, I'm excited because it's a new day, it's a new week, and I'm glad to be back here on the show today. It's quite so, not so sunny, not so gloomy day in Abuja. That's Nigeria's capital city. Just the way I like it. Yes, so my name is Adesuwa Osui.
And I am Sagir Ibrahim. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. Good morning, Adesuwa.
Good morning. Why did your countenance change before you said good morning to me?
Like
you were saying good morning to the viewers and you were looking all bubbly.
Wait. Why are you excited?
I don't know. It's a Monday. I'm good. I'm glad to be back here.
You are done in black.
Yes.
Why?
Yeah, because it's a good day to wear black.
I don't understand why.
I don't know. I'm just in the mood for it.
No,
all right. So, it's a Monday, so what better time to bring you some Monday morning motivation than with our coach of the day. And after that, we'll be looking at stories and happenings, developments from across Africa.
Always remember,
This man I actually creative design. We really like it.
you deserve a break. You can indulge in a cup of 3-in-1 Cadbury Hot Chocolate. Cadbury Hot Chocolate. Indulge. Now available in the 450 grams pouch.
All right, let's move into the stories, shall we? Starting from here in Nigeria. Quite an interesting story here today. So migration has surged in Nigeria. Yeah, they said 50% of Nigerians relocating abroad for employment crisis. That's, coming from the World Bank. Now, Nigeria is facing an acute employment crisis that puts pressure on irregular migration for Nigerians who are seeking to leave the country for a better economic future abroad. The World Bank, in a report titled Of Road Less Traveled, assessing the potential for migration to provide overseas jobs for Nigerian youths, posted on its website this week saying about 50% of Nigerians are willing to leave Nigeria in hopes for a better life, making it an increase of nearly 20% since 2014. Now, is this news to you? As a young Nigerian that has been living in Nigeria, is it news to you that 50%, because I know 50% of Nigerians are the population of potentially youth, employable Nigerians are actually, looking to relocate, leave the country. Is it news for you?
Is it news to you?
I'm asking the question. I'm asking the question now.
It's not news to me because, like they said, the cases, the reasons they gave were valid. Looking for better opportunities. When you go out there in the street and you hear what young Nigerians are saying, you would be, do I say disappointed or appalled? You see young Nigerians who have a lot of potential, who are eager and have so much to give, but don't even know how to go about giving all of these things because the opportunities, number one, are not even there.
Oh, yes. Or you are giving it and then the policies and cramps it, keeps cramping it, and you're like, look, if I put in this effort somewhere else, I'm sure I'm going to get better results.
And now this trickles down to what I was saying the other day about increasing the retirement age of civil servants from 60 to 65 years. And it's doing a lot of harm to Nigerian youth because this only means that you've added an extra 5 years to people who are supposed to have retired for a new breed of people to come in. So when we have a lot of people staying outside because the ones who are inside have refused to retire or their retirement ages are being extended, what happens? The backlog is going to keep piling and piling up. And you see more Nigerians out on the streets who have so much to give but cannot give it because those who are supposed to have excused themselves for them to come in and start revolutionizing and changing the way things are supposed to be done are not even living in the first place. Now, when you find yourself in that situation, some of them get frustrated. They look for alternative means. Number one, okay, fine. I think if I can leave the country, I will leave the country. They seek for means to leave the country. Unfortunately, some of them find irregular or illegal means of leaving the country. Some find legitimate means of leaving the country, and they do. And even more unfortunate is those who at the end of the day have no other choice for one reason or the other and find themselves in crime. Because you have all of this to give, you cannot give it. You have responsibility that's waiting for you to cater, and you have no means of catering for those responsibilities, and then you have to, one way or the other, they find themselves in crime. And if you look at this at the end of the day, it even boils down to the increase in insurgent attacks, an increase in the amount of kidnapping, bandits, and criminal operations we have been seeing surge over the years.
Yeah.
Because all of these things are just, I mean, a 65-year-old to a 70-year-old man. But does he have the time to carry an AK-47 to go and kidnap somebody on the street? The beating he's going to receive, first of all, he will be overpowered. That is just the truth.
Yeah.
We know that a lot, and even a very high percentage of those who are perpetrating these acts of crime that are Nigerians are young Nigerians, because I know some quarters are saying there are people who were, imported from God knows where to come and perpetrate crime to, in quote, sabotage the current government's efforts. But then those who are Nigerians, actually young Nigerians who have one way or the other found themselves in what they are doing because the system has in one way or the other frustrated their efforts to be good Nigerians.
So, Sarah, are you going to leave the country?
I'm not going to answer that on air. Moving forward, we go to Sierra Leone, where death penalty has been abolished. Yes, Sierra Leone is set to be the 23rd African country to abolish death penalty as a capital punishment. The country's lawmakers on Friday voted unanimously to abolish the death penalty more than 2 decades after the West African country carried out its last execution, when 24 military officers were put to death after a coup attempt the year before. Capital punishment will be replaced with life imprisonment or a minimum 30-year jail term for crimes such as murder or mutiny. I think that's good news.
It is, actually. Although sometimes I usually say crimes such as maybe sexually abusing a minor or something like that deserves the death penalty. I always say that. But then again, I mean, life imprisonment is good enough.
Okay.
You're having to spend a larger portion of your life being incarcerated and having time
the rest of your life being
incarcerated to feel the guilt and reflect
on the decisions you made.
I think that's good enough.
So I know some people would say them dying is not enough. I mean, if you kill them, you're just giving them an easy way out. Why don't you let them survive and live through the guilt and realities of what they did
behind bars?
Yes, behind bars, exactly. Incarcerated, knowing that they've lost their freedom for life because of this decision they made.
Exactly.
Just sentencing them to death and executing them might not be enough. But then again, life imprisonment and removing the death penalty or the death sentence means that at some point in their lifetime, they might be eligible for parole. Now, that depends on the interpretation of the law, on the kind of offense, and of course, the person involved. So I don't know how. I'm not a lawyer, and I'm not a learned person per se. But then I know at some point there are certain sentences which once carried out or once convicted, one becomes eligible for parole at some
after
time.
a certain amount of time. But I just feel like it gives you enough time to actually, feel the brunt and feel the guilt of what you did that actually puts you behind bars.
Okay, so what would you say about someone who commits, let's say, multiple homicide? Let's say someone went on a killing spree, for example. Shoot 10, 15 persons at a time.
Like you said, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a learned person. So I really wouldn't know. All right, moving away from Sierra Leone to back in Nigeria, actually, where the federal government and the United Arab Emirates have agreed to collaborate in order to track illegal movement of gold from Nigeria to Dubai. This was revealed by the Minister of Mines and Steel Development, Olamilekan Adegbite, in Abuja. He said that huge quantity of gold were being moved illegally from Nigeria to Dubai daily, adding that the gold passed through UAE police because, unknowingly to them, royalties were not paid to Nigeria.
It's just unfortunate that the only natural resource that the nation focuses on is just oil.
Oil!
And even the oil itself, to some extent, we're even being exploited because, we explore, we extract, and then we export. We take it outside to be refined and get only petrol back. The other minerals and the other contents that could be gotten from the oil we never get back. So even the oil itself, it's not like we're managing it properly. And that's why I just hope that the petroleum industry bill is passed as soon as possible. This will ensure that all of these bottlenecks and challenges we get as a result of we not having a functional refinery gets solved. And then back to gold, like I said, we have a lot of natural resources and mineral deposits here in Nigeria, but the focus is just on oil. We have gold, we have silver, we have a lot of others, and these things are being mined illegally and taken out of the country, and the government's focus is really not on them per se. because I know it was even the issue of this gold to some point that contributed to the issues that we are facing currently in Zamfara State.
Yes.
You know, there's a very large deposit of gold. It is being mined illegally, and to some extent the government at some point were like, oh, hey, you need to stop this because it's illegal. Nobody has given you a license or a mining permit to do what you're doing here, and you keep doing it, and to some extent it blew up and became something else. So until the government is ready to say, okay, we are going to take charge of all of our mineral deposits, you know, and find a way in which it could one way or the other translate to, you know, forex and money coming back to the economy, we're just going to keep facing all of these problems.
All right.
And then I need to say this quickly.
Okay.
During the weekend, I think 26 out of the over 140, I think 28 or thereabouts, of the over 140 Bethel students from Kaduna State were released. So it's still good news, even though we have over 80 of them still in captivity. So we just hope that the abductors would see reason and release the rest of the students.
All right, with that, we move straight into COVID-19 update from across Africa. And after that, we'll be looking at front pages of Nigerian dailies this morning.
TOS TV Network mobile app is now available. You can now catch up on our breaking news, stream our programs live, watch out for the latest update on sports and politics as they unfold. You can also get notifications for our upcoming programs and events. All these on our TOS TV Network mobile app, available on Apple Store and Google Play Store. TOS TV News from Africa by Africans.
Being a journalist means in-depth analysis that unravels hidden truths, that question the status quo and fact-checks government.
These criminal elements hiding under the cloak of surveillance contractors are the APC elements.
Do you have facts to prove that? Being a journalist means waking up every day with a burning desire for peace, equity, and justice for all citizens.
We're being told that the choice you have is to take the lesser of two evils.
It means patriotism via the prism of objectivity and accountability. It means giving my platform to the masses to discuss issues that matter to them.
Some of them, if they bring budget and the budget they look, some of them sleep. They're going to ask how much you are on. I have it.
Thereby shaping government policies and laws. My name is Osasu Igmeneja, and I am the People's Journalist.
It's still the conversation on your digital first Pan-African News Network, TOS Television, and you could be part of the conversation by connecting with us on our various social media channels and handles currently showing on your screen. It is the newspaper segment of the conversation this morning, and we would start with the Business Day newspaper. And from the banner headline there, we see Nigeria risks lost generation of mass abduction of students, and beside that we see governance, liquidity, regulation prompt companies exit from Nigerian exchange. And that would be it for the Business Day newspaper this morning.
Looking at the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper, starting from the banner headline there, says kidnappers and FCT begin collection of ransom through banks. Three riders underneath that headline. The first one says how we're made to make deposits, victims' relatives, banks not helping matters. That's coming from victims. What government is doing. All of this continued on on page 5 of the Daily Trust. 25 die in Kano, Bauchi road crashes. That's on page 3. Benin court decides Igboho's fate today as Kano appears in Abuja court. Counter-insurgency, 265 policemen killed in Borno. And the last headline on the Daily Trust newspaper says, ASU threatens strike over federal government's failure to implement agreement. And that's on page 13 of the Daily Trust newspaper.
We move over to the Nigerian News Direct newspaper, and from the very top we see court restrains union from strike action, picketing FIRS offices, and that could be found on page 30 of the Nigerian News Direct newspaper. And besides that, we see abducted 5 members of Maritime Workers Union, others regain freedom. And also beside that, we see Dangote emerges Nigeria's most impactful local content company of the year. That could be found on page 17 of the Nigerian News Direct newspaper this morning. For the banner headline there, we see 280th MPC meeting. Mixed reactions trailed cut in CBN's interest rate, other parameters. We have a rider there. Formulate economic security, and that's by analysts who urged. That could be found on page 3 of the Nigerian News Direct newspaper. Underneath that, we see Oriental Energy announces new managing director, how FG plans to boost export with 50 billion naira ESP funding, and that's by Awolowo. Don't engage partisan politics, NAS warns Christians. And there are a couple of other headlines on the Nigerian News Direct newspaper this morning. You could simply grab a copy to keep updated.
The last front page we'll be looking at is the front page of the Daily Times newspaper. And the very bad, gaping headline, the banner headline, is on Kaduna, and it says, I was a living dead man while my daughter was in captivity. That's coming from a parent of a released abducted student. As abductors of 121 students of Bethel Baptist High School released 28, holding back 87. Kidnappers of Niger Islamia school children seize man sent to deliver ransom. Quite a number of other headlines on the Daily Times newspaper this morning. Just grab yourself a copy so you can be fully abreast with happenings inside the paper.
And that would be it for the newspaper segment of the conversation this morning. We'll go on a quick break, and when we return, we'll bring you the big story.
You won't go shake your body. Instead, they make it calm down. It a form say sabi. You want to grow 6 packs in a day. I beg you not to pass your power. You want to show yourself, oh.
Whatever your size, find it with the new Airtel data plans. Dial *141# now to get the plan that suits you. Airtel, the smartphone network.
At the first sign of pain, you need a solution that you can trust to provide effective relief and is gentle on the stomach. Try Panadol Caplets for relief from headaches, body aches, and fever. With Panadol's Optizorb formula, the tablet gently breaks down in the stomach, quickly absorbs, and starts providing pain relief in 15 minutes. For fast and effective pain relief that you can trust, try Panadol Caplets. This has been Medifact for Panadol.
You're still watching The Conversation on your digital first Pan-African News Network, TOS Television, and like I always say, you can be part of the conversation by connecting with us on our various social media channels on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I'm at TOS TV Network. You could also watch us live at www.tostvnetwork.com, as well as view some of our content on YouTube at TOS TV Network. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It is the big story segment of the conversation, and this morning's focus is going to be on cholera outbreak in Nigeria, preventing further spread. And we are joined by a medical doctor, Dr. Sunday Olatunde, and he is as well a clinical pharmacist. Welcome to the conversation this morning, doctor.
Thank you very much for having me on the program today.
It's good to have you.
And good morning to the audience.
Yes.
All right. So, doctor, first of all, According to the Nigerian Center for Disease Control, NCDC, between January and this month, an outbreak of cholera has killed over 325 people. So we would like you to tell us what the deadly disease entails, what it's about, how it's contracted, and quite everything.
Oh, thank you very much, and once again for having me on the program. And thanks to the viewers at home. Cholera, as it is popularly, called, it is a bacterial infection, largely caused by a bacteria called the Vibrio cholera. And it is largely spread or contacted through contaminated food, contaminated water, and maybe hand that is not properly, washed. When the bacteria enters into the stomach through ingestion of a contaminated material, either food or water, it gets itself attached to the wall of the small intestine, and by that produces some toxins. These toxins causes abnormal, production of fluid, water. That's a body water that we can easily call the body fluid. That gets into the large intestine to produce a large volume of stew, which is very watery. And it is this particular, large volume of bodily water that is produced, which produces the stew, that actually makes it very deadly. Because in the course of this, it produces what we call a acid-base balance and electrolyte imbalance in the body. In that case, the body of a human being actually maintains its functionality by having a balance between different ions in the body, ions like the sodium, like the calcium, like potassium, and all of that. And these are suspended in this body fluid. And this body fluid, when it is largely being expelled out of the body through the frequent bowel movement, as the one we call diarrhea, you see a situation where the heart that requires the calcium to maintain its tonicity, that's the ability for it to pump blood, or the ability for it to relax and collect more blood, is lost easily. You also see what we call a hypovolemic shock, in which the blood could not have sufficient pressure to be pushed to different end organs that will require the blood to function. So you see a kind of generalized end organ damage, and so on and so forth. How is it transmitted? Okay, let me take a look at how it can be transmitted. How it can be spread. Well, I said through contaminated food, contaminated water. With what? Usually with fecal matter, because it is a fecal-oral, route with which it can be spread. How do I mean? Take, for example, before someone will have cholera, the person has contacted or has taken a contaminated water. Where is the water contaminated? Usually from stool, poo of an infected person. And how does that happen? Take, for example, you see cholera is not a disease of a well-civilized and urbanized society. It is largely a disease that happens, or an outbreak that happens, where in developing countries or in developing parts of the city, usually. And if you look at the Abuja situation, you will understand that it happens in the suburb. In those suburbs where the source of drinking water, it may be largely contaminated as a result of different reasons. In some of the communities, their source of drinking water is the nearby stream or their nearby water body. In some cases where people even have a well-coordinated borehole or water source, it may be contaminated through improper disposal of liquid waste, so that the sewages and all that, where you could have a pipe that links to the septic tank broken somewhere, and the liquid sewage or the sewage is contaminating the water body. That is in one part for those who have borehole and other. For those who take their source of their drinking water from the nearby stream or river, they are in a situation where you have open defecation, especially that one is a big problem in Nigeria, where somebody is at a certain end, pooing in the nearby bush, but you wouldn't know that when rain falls, that particular content of stew is going to be washed to the nearby water body. The outbreak you are seeing in Abuja, even though the authority have not come out to tell us the exact cause, but I tell you, it could be caused in Plateau State. The reason is this: if they have a stream that traverses Plateau State to Abuja, to Kogi State, and gets into the ocean in Niger Delta, Are you getting this? And somebody is using the nearby bush to dispose fecal matter, or for him himself to pass the fecal matter. That can be the source of the water in Plateau State could be contaminated, and because the water will flow and flows down to Abuja, and there's a village nearby in Abuja that's using that same stream as their own source of drinking water, they can be fetching from that particular stream to drink, whereas the water is contaminated right from Plateau State. In this case, you have common spread of,
That actually makes sense, because I was wondering how we would have an epidemic. It moves from Plateau State to another state and then in Abuja, because I thought it was supposed to be centered in one community. If there's a cholera outbreak, then it's supposed to be, say there's a cholera outbreak in Jos, then it should stay in Jos. But we're having to hear, we have it here now, we have it here now. But you having to explain that, I think that kind of makes sense.
Also, I want to add, because there's this general belief that once you boil water, just to 100 degrees, it should be declared safe for drinking. So does that help? It's
largely help when we get to, ways of preventing it. I want to believe we will get there in this.
Maybe you should just tell us now
how could we prevent cholera? There are different ways. Number one is, first and foremost, the source of our drinking water and the source of our food. Okay, as I've explained already, how we could get it. The boiling water is the first and the most convenient way to actually sterilize water to be safe for drinking. There's hardly any bacteria that can survive boiling water at 100 degrees Celsius continuously for 20 minutes. I don't mean that when you put the water on fire. No, I mean when it starts boiling. You leave it boiling for 20 minutes before you cool it off. When it's cool, it is safe for drinking because there's hardly any microorganism that can survive that particular temperature. So first and foremost, boil water. The source of your water, be sure of it. If yours is from the stream, boil it before you drink it and cool. If yours is not from the stream, try to check whether there's leakages in your septic tank and so on and so forth. That's number one in terms of water. In terms of food, our food should be properly cooked. Do not heat half-boiled food. If you have to heat food that is not supposed to be boiled at all, make sure you wash it, maybe or most of the time, with salty water. There are food that we heat that we don't have to boil. Take, for example, if you buy apple, you don't have to boil it. Fruits generally. But they could as well be contaminated based on how it has been handled, the kind of hand that has handled it, and where it's coming from. So in such a situation, you may have food that you don't have to boil before you eat, but you can wash it with salty water and allow it to stay for a little while in the salty water before you eventually, because the length of contact that the bacteria will have with the salt will determine whether it will be killed or not. If it's too brief, it may not be killed. Apart from that, I'll take a look at government policy, policies of eradication of open defecation. If that is not done, we will continue to have this kind of thing because we know that in the interlands, not in the cities of Abuja now, but in the interland, the villages and all that, principally, their sources of water is from the nearby stream. Even though the government is coming up with give a borehole, do this and all that, but we know that this borehole, they are not widespread. Many villages still depend on the nearby stream. So if we cannot eradicate open defecation, you continue to battle with this kind of outbreak once in a while in Nigeria. Apart from that, we should have a policy on providing a public toilet. If you look at our society, we actually don't have public toilet. And if someone is just passing by, as easy as passing by, and you are pressed, you want to use the nearby public toilet. If it's not there, some people will be forced to use the nearby bush. In the nearby bush, there's no soap and water to wash your hand. And so we want to advocate, number one, that when you use toilet at any point in time, wash your hand very well. Even before and after you have used the toilet, before you start dealing with either food items or before you start shaking, hands with other people and start spreading whatever that you have contacted from the toilet. So proper hand hygiene is very important. And how do we do that? It's about frequently washing the hand. If you want to do anything, wash your hand first. When you finish doing it, wash your hand. You wash your hand, wash it with soap and water. Make sure you rub your palm. Make sure you rub in between your fingers. Make sure you rub the end of your palm for at least 20 seconds with soapy water. When that is done, you rinse with a flowing water, not a stagnant water in a bucket, but the one that is flowing. And when you do that, you may not need to use a towel to actually dry up. You may need to use something like hair normally, because or you spread, you allow your hand to have exposure to normal hair to be dry like that. Because if you don't do that, you don't know. Even the towel you are talking about, whether somebody else had used it before you, and so on and so you start spreading all of that. Apart from, if you can take a look at all of this, we'll be able to prevent. And I want to say that enlightenment and education is very important. Familiarizing people with the symptoms of cholera is also very important.
Okay, can you also tell us some of the symptoms as well?
Yes, you know, when we talk of you know, cholera outbreak, it's like a disease condition that can be contacted the way typhoid can be contacted an H. pylori infection. Okay, they are gastrointestinal, you know, infections which are passed through fecal oral route. That what do I mean is from feces to mouth and into the system, to the stomach, from stomach moved into the intestine, and it's in the intestine it stays to get attached to it. What it does is when it produces the toxin, that's the Vibrio cholera in this case, which is the culpable you know, bacteria that will cause the disease called cholera. When that happens, it attaches itself to the wall of the small intestine. When that happens, the body starts producing excessive fluid. And this fluid is what our body is made up of, completely. Our body is about 60% water. And inside this water are suspended with you know, ions like sodium, calcium, and potassium, as I explained before. Now, when you see the person passing frequent stool, because the intestine will notice that there's a foreign body here, I want to move it out. And in moving it out, the water that is also produced is being moved out. So the person becomes, one, start having diarrhea. Number two, the person become dehydrated. Of course, you know that water is losing the body. And now we notice dehydration. If you look at eyelid of a person that is dehydrated, it's sunken. It's not as robust as it. You can see skin that is also wrinkled. You can also notice on the lips, dry lips and all that. You see dehydration. Depends. Some people could also vomit. Start vomiting copiously, frequent vomiting. As the person is vomiting, pushing everything from the stomach out, with even fluid that is in the stomach, the person is also stooling. At the same time, losing fluid in both ways. When you see this, for some people, when the you know, the bacteria has produced its toxin and the toxin has found its way into the general bloodstream, they could start having a body temperature or feel generally malaise, having fever and so on and so forth. But the cardinal, symptom that you will look for is diarrhea. This diarrhea is almost unstoppable. So if we want to manage a case like that, so let me quickly explain management of it, because I, as a person, even though it is not to completely in adherence to ethics of our profession, you know, you don't want to teach the patient how to manage the case, but we know that those that are largely affected are people who are vulnerable. There's no nearby hospital. They largely would depend on maybe the nearby chemist store or whatever. So what can they do? Because if you ask them to go and get a hospital in about 8 to 10 kilometers away, something else may have happened before they get there. So I would like, first and foremost, is I would like to teach how they can make, number one, because replacement of the fluid is the first thing to be done. The fluid that is being lost now, you have to keep replacing it. If you are not replenishing it, the person is going to pass on very fast.
So how do you replace the fluid?
Okay, you know, normally if it was in the hospital and clinical setting, you want to set drip for the person. If the person is not vomiting, the case is easier to manage, because you can easily make an oral rehydration therapy. You put that ORS, the salt in water, make it in 1 liter of water, and the person start drinking it lavishly. Okay, you can save life with that. But in some cases, you have a situation where the person is having this diarrhea at the same time is vomiting. If the person is vomiting, it cannot retain ORS. So in such situation, you have no choice than to quickly, put the person on infusion. You know what we mean by infusion? Drip.
Yes.
Okay, that's what you quickly do. That can only be done in a clinical setting. Is that not it? Okay, for those who are in the village, who even may not even have the ORS in their nearby drugstore, they may need to put like about 6 to 8 cubes of sugar with a teaspoon full of salt and put it in a liter of water or a beer bottle of water. Let me say a beer bottle, not necessarily a liter, because they may not be able to a beer bottle of water. If they do that, they have made an ORS. So the person could start drinking it. But where you could have some challenges is if the person is vomiting, you have to want to stop vomiting. This kind of vomiting may not even listen to medication easily. So in that case, you have no choice than to quickly set a drip. But before you get to the hospital and drip will be set, you can make that and the person keep drinking it as much as possible. Okay. That's for the symptoms, and the management listens to some antibiotics actually. As simple as the tetracycline is, it does very well at 500 milligrams hourly for 5 days. It will do very well for this particular
Thank you so much. That was quite insightful. There's a lot you said that I didn't know about, especially the part about boiling water consistently for 20 minutes. I just thought just boiling it and then it was done.
No, it's not enough. You have to leave it boiled for 20 minutes.
All right, thank you so much for joining us on the show this morning. It's such a pleasure and quite delightful actually to actually have you on the show. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yes, you're welcome. And thank you for joining us on the conversation this morning. Don't forget that we're back to you tomorrow. But before then, you have to follow TOS TV Network across all social media platforms. That's TOS TV Network on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and of course, subscribe to TOS TV Network on YouTube so you don't miss out on amazing content. You can also subscribe, stream our content on www.tostvnetwork.com. My name is Adesuwa Osui.
And I am Sagir Ibrahim. We'll see you tomorrow. Stay safe.